Thank you, everyone, and good morning. I hope you're enjoying the papers so far. It's a great turnout, so thank you so much for allowing us to be here and the opportunity. My name's Vic. I head up the London office for Borderless Access. As you can, I just want to ask a question, hands up. How many of you actually seen that movie? Yes? Good. We've got some sci-fi fans. Excellent. I'm a bit of a Trekkie, so I can do that. As you know, we just mentioned there's close encounters of the third kind. So as researchers, you know, our holy grail is to get as close as possible to consumers and our target group and really identify the truth. Now, if you think of close encounters of the first kind in terms of quantitative, the second kind in terms of qual, we firmly believe that there is a third kind, and today we're going to talk through that and explore the possibilities and opportunities that come with that. So I'll hand it over to my colleague, Sriram.
Thanks, Vekas. Quant and qual has been there since ages, but what we are talking here today is about the possible coming together of both these. We could say quant began in the era with the era of political polling. So Gallup got it right, but few others got it wrong. Sometimes we even get it wrong even now. But probably we can say that's the era when the scientific data collection was born. Along the way, we also had qual taking center stage because the researchers felt the need for a contextual layer over the quant data. So we see that both quant and qual exist as coexistent methodologies today, but they also evolved along their own paths. Quant evolved along CATI, online, and other technologies, whereas qual evolved along its own path of focus groups and CLTs. But today, with the digital transformation, do we have something which is coming next? Yes, that's a point to ponder. So this is an interesting data about the various spends in methodologies. So obviously, quant holds a major stake, but we also see that there is another category which is up and coming. So that prompts us to ask ourselves the question, is there a third kind? This is another interesting piece of information which talks about how the digital transformation has increased reach to the consumer. We started with radio and television measurements. We went on to online data collection, mobile research. We also have passive metering coming in. And today, we have social media and other sources of data which help us reach over 90% of the target audience. Now, this is very important. This is for places where internet penetration is good. So if you look at So at the other end of the spectrum, if you look at today, we are looking at over 90% of the population in these markets is reachable. So this is a very important point of interest for a social researcher. Now we have a lot of sources of data. Now by virtue of volume, they qualify as quantitative data, but all these data points also have a layer of context added to them. Let's look at one of the examples. Now, if you look at images which we share on social media, they qualify by sheer volume as quantitative data, but they also have a layer of context added. Now, we can code these images for emotion. We can code them for location activity. There are several data points that we can gather from images that are shared. Likewise, we have several other such sources, email data, chat, social media, instant messaging. All these can be codified. By their volume, they qualify as quant, but because of the context, they also qualify as qualitative data. So that puts in front of us three important questions. Is the blur between quant and qual, is the divide between quant and qual blurring? And what is the future of the MR industry in the light of this merger? And do we have the right tools and technologies? It would be interesting to stop here briefly and look at how we look at this transformation. Now, one of the most important examples of the digital transformation is the mobile device. The reason why we look at the mobile device will become evident when we move further into the session. But a typical smartphone user has over 90 apps in his device, has 102, more than 100 individual interactions with the apps. And here are some of the apps which are most commonly used. Now, yeah. So we're going to present a case study where we looked at bringing together the quantitative aspect and the qualitative aspect. When it came to the qualitative aspect, we wanted to know what would be the right vehicle to reach a consumer. Now, we know what are the most active times when a respondent is willing to share information about himself. There are a lot of analytics that has gone into it. But there is also a channel which plays a very important role. Now, the reason why we looked at a mobile phone, a smartphone, is its ubiquity. You have almost everybody using a smartphone nowadays, and all of them use WhatsApp and those apps which are shown here. Now, the three most important aspects of good research is to reach the consumers at the right time, right channel, and at the right location. What we did was to actually combine quant and qual by using a vehicle like WhatsApp. The reason why we chose WhatsApp was obviously because of the smartphone penetration and its widespread, and WhatsApp's widespread use among the smartphone users. This case study was actually focused on female facial care users, a very common product category. We looked at conducting a pre-face survey, which was a typical quant survey which had a pre-purchase phase and a purchase phase, and then we followed it up immediately with a WhatsApp phase. The difference was, in WhatsApp, we looked at how the insightful information that we could get from users. The respondents for both these phases were drawn from the qualitative phase of the survey. Now, this, I would let Vekas take you through the rest of the case study.
Thank you very much. So just to go back on what Sriram had presented to you, as you can see in this day and age with technology, there are masses, it's plethora of information out there, and I'm sure in a lot of the other papers that have been presented, talking about big data, it's easy to get confused, and it's very hard to find out how we can actually leverage this. So we're just going to be looking at one channel and one very small way that you can actually make sense of the data you've gained. So as Sriram mentioned to you, we decided to actually utilize mobile technology. So I already know the answer to this, but I am going to give you guys a bit of exercise. So who here has a mobile phone? Come on! Who doesn't? Stand up. See? No one, right? And who? This might actually not be 100% incidence, but who has WhatsApp on their phone? Does anyone not? No, there's a few that don't, right? Yeah. So, but mostly, you guys do. So it made sense to use that to actually engage with individuals. So we as researchers will have them. So consumers will have a high incidence rate, high prevalence of having that technology on their devices. And as researchers, we need to engage with consumers using a method which is already comfortable for them and which is natural for them. And for us, I know if I leave my mobile phone somewhere, I feel almost naked. So that's how most people are these days. So we started with a quant survey, and this was done in 2 phases. We had a pre-phase and a post-phase, and there was a week in between. And it was across 2 different markets, so the US and India, which are completely polar opposite sides of the world, different languages, different cultures. So we just thought we'd see what is the difference in the path to purchase amongst females 21 to 34 years old for the purchase of skincare products. We then also, in between those two, did a qualitative piece utilizing WhatsApp. And it's important to mention that you could probably use any instant messenger application that has a good incidence rate, but the WhatsApp application just kind of seemed like the logical choice for us. And in between that, we wanted to see, does this hybrid approach give us some new insights and understanding into these individuals? So if we're looking at the US, it gave us good understanding for the quant side of things across the awareness sources, the people that are influencing their purchases, where the women actually intended to first purchase their product, how they actually purchased it in the end, the reason for their purchase, and how they actually evaluated it in the end. Now, what we found in the US, which was very interesting, is that most women prefer to make their purchases in the retail store. So it's very brick and mortar, old-fashioned kind of buying. And also their intention and their purchase kind of was very similar. There wasn't much of a difference for that. In terms of the awareness sources, social media was also a big part of it. There were physical shops and also friends and family. Now, if we compare this to India, very quickly, we noticed there were some differences. You'd be surprised to know that most women intended to purchase online, 73% of them. And in terms of their influences, commercials, online adverts played just as much an important part as much as friends and family referring which products were good for them. So it really shows us that this emerging market has embraced social media, has embraced the internet, has embraced digital technology, and has almost leapfrogged the traditional way of purchasing. So let's look into the path to purchase. So there's 4 stages. The first stage, contemplate, and we looked at the US and India. There were similarities in terms of, there were actually quite differences. So in terms of social media, for the US was more prevalent, friends and family, but more digital times of kind of influences were important for India. For actually making the decision, in the US, it was really on stock, what's available. Price is always a factor across whichever market we realized. But in India, it was about the accessibility. Is the logistics of that product going to get to me? Is it going to be delivered okay, safely, etc.? So that was interesting. Now, when it came to purchasing, we found, as I mentioned before, in the US, it was much more them going into stores. India was online. And in terms of their evaluation, most of the women were very satisfied with how they'd purchased and the product that they got at the end in terms of their process. So let's look at the qual findings. What was this about, and what did we gain from this? So we felt that it actually given us a much deeper and richer understanding into each of the phases. As you can see here, we received a lot of images, so pictures of the actual products. We also got sort of receipts of their actual purchase to show, look, hey, this is actually what I bought and this is what it cost me. Now that is really insightful. It shows us the actual store they've gone to, there's evidence that they've actually purchased it, and you can see those pricing factors as well, so they're backing that up. So just focusing on that. We also were able to see the specific channels which influenced them. So they would share with us on WhatsApp like reviews and why they went for a certain review and compared to another. And for India, that was particularly useful because of the very strong feeling to use online and social media to kind of make purchases. Okay. I've got to hurry up. Okay, so it also gave us a better understanding in terms of the kind of products they were purchasing. I'll just skip through here. Now, the interesting thing, and probably the most important slide, is how we hybrid this, how we overlap it. So you can see the quant phase there. Now, if you put the qual phase on top of it, you get a better understanding of the actual social media that the US individuals are seeing and the adverts that they're seeing in India to contemplate. And also the evaluation stage, they're showing us the physical products they've bought, how they've been presented to them, what kind of packaging they're seeing as well. And in terms of the purchase, you can see we get storefronts, they're showing us how the products are laid out, and that's giving us deeper insight as well. One thing we did notice with India is even a week after purchasing the product, they kept the boxes. They like to keep the actual products and put it back in. So that might be useful insights for anyone developing these products to make sure your boxes are of a decent standard because it makes a lasting impression. So, our learnings. Going back to the 3 questions that Sriram mentioned, is there a blur between quant and qual? Yes, there is. There's an opportunity there. The future of MR definitely needs to adopt this hybrid method. There is opportunity to understand the behavior of consumers. And do we have the right tools at the moment? Yes, we do. As researchers, we might not, but there's plenty of companies, tech companies out there, which have developed the technology we need to develop this hybrid approach, and we need to take advantage of it. People are already engaged on there. You are all already engaged on there. So we need to take advantage of that and kind of implement that into our methodologies. So overall, we gained very good insights into consumers. It gave us a better understanding of how we can actually help businesses grow. It's a very cost-effective methodology, and it's very quick as well. And as researchers, I think that's exactly what we like. So thank you ever so much for your time today.